right, perfect. Okay, so this is just like 14 basic get you started techniques. There's lots of different techniques, and if you take an Art 2 class with me, I'll almost double how many I show you. But whatever I'm asking you to do on this worksheet, it's been kind of described over here if you can't remember from the demonstration, and I would also suggest that you get one of these that are already complete, that I've already done from past demos, and have that with you while you work on it. So the first thing I need to do is a graded wash. So a graded wash is just going from light to dark. So I'd start with pure color. It doesn't matter what colors you use on here. So that I would consider that my dark color. And then I'd keep going back to the water dish to water it down and then kind of pull that color with you. And it should gradually get lighter and diluted. You'll dilute it. So clearly light to dark. A flat wash is just filling a specific area with even color. Pay attention to stroke direction. It's very streaky. Like if I started going in every direction, you're going to see that. So keep it smooth. Stippling is just a clustering of small dots. Yeah, a series of small dots or spots of paint to build up value and visual texture. So you need to show a couple different colors with this, and I'd stay in cool colors or either warm colors so that you don't make a brown by them mixing. And they kind of need to bleed or touch, so it doesn't just look like polka dots. This would be good for foliage if I was doing greens and yellows. Wet on wet, you take a wet brush, wet your paper, and then drop some color in. And then it bleeds, sort of reminds me of tie-dye. And the color should only go where the paper's wet. So the wax of the crayon you can do a resist with, and it's for little textural marks. You don't want to fill something in. That's going to look really sort of elementary, I guess. Maybe for outlining stuff, or to separate two areas from running into each other. And see how the water goes back off the wax. A lift using paper towel or a sponge to create a highlight or texture. Dry brush, load your brush full of paint, get a lot of it off so that you can have some nice line. Different than the dry brush technique I just showed you for your fish. So pretty much some line. Masking tape, using tape to preserve the white of the paper. Having the contrast of the colors and then like the stark white of your paper is a really nice watercolor technique. Thinking about like highlights maybe in the water or the sky. And then you'll paint right over it. And when it's completely dry, you'll carefully pull it off. You need to be careful not to rip your paper. Plastic wrap, I like to incorporate metallic when I do the plastic wrap technique. I think it helps it to show up. But again, use a couple different colors. And it needs to be pretty wet. And then you take the plastic wrap and you can either stretch or crumple it. So if you want it to have, you know, more defined lines, like maybe you want to show lines in the water, then you're going to want to stretch it. If you want it to look more organic, sort of crumple it. Maybe you were doing rocks, maybe you'd crumple for the top of texture for rocks. And then again, when it's completely dry, so pretty much the next class period, you'll take that off, and it should look like that. So metallic, I just wanted you to try out metallic watercolors. Just fill an area. Splatter, you should be familiar with this one. You might want to create a stencil because it's going to go everywhere. And using a toothbrush, I'm going to splatter some paint on there. Gouache, white tempera paint. Can somebody bring the white tempera paint over to me? You mix watercolor with white tempera paint. Need a palette too. So just a little bit of tempera paint, and you're not supposed to put regular paint in here, but I am. Mix it with some watercolor, and you get that opaque look. And you can actually buy tubes of gouache paint, but this is a cheap way to do it. All you need is white tempera paint and watercolor, and see how it looks quite a bit different. And then the salt technique. I start the salt technique the same way I did the plastic wrap, so I like to incorporate a metallic. And then you just sprinkle on some salt. And then the next class period you can scrape it off with like an X-Acto blade. So those are the first sort of basic techniques. So I want you guys to each practice these until you're successful. I feel like you'll probably get it first try. And then think about what kind of like maybe a landscape image you'd like to do and which ones you'd be applying to like different parts. Like maybe you do a graded sky, or maybe you do a graded sort of water, body of water, where it's going from light to dark. The more of these techniques you use, the more interesting it's going to be. Like the crayon you could use on bark, trying to show like a tree bark, or lines and cracks in like rocks. So think about how you're going to apply these, because I think I have you use like four or six in your landscape. All right? And maybe start those next class.